This is episode 93. 90, 93. I graduated, class of 93.
Wow.
Given my age there. No Laugh Track Podcast. This is Justin Severson, the host. Thank you to Circle of Heat for letting us play their tunes there at the beginning, as always. I'm here with my guest. He's been here before, but it's been a while.
What was that? Episode 12, 13?
18. 18, and now we're 93. Tom Rhodes.
Hey, brother. How are you, Justin?
I am awesome. We're at this is the first you managed to come into town. And this is officially the nicest day we've had in Minnesota in the 2014.
And you got me inside. I appreciate it.
We're inside, underground. Meanwhile,
why don't you ever do your podcast in a park outside?
How about the baseball park? They're playing right now, a mile away, and we're in here.
I love it. I'm going to see 2 games this year.
Yeah, that's what you said.
Or this week, rather. Yeah.
Yeah. And you've never been.
Never been to the new stadium. Can't wait. I went to the old one.
Oh, you did?
And your neck hurt because you had to twist your head to the right.
You didn't sit in the one seat where we had a direct shot of the field?
No, I guess that was center field, right?
Yeah, there was like one row, I think. Well, welcome back to Minneapolis.
I love it. One of the greatest cities in the world. As Prince Rogers Nelson said, the bad weather keeps the mean people away.
That's right. That's right. You just missed it. He just did one of those private shows like a few weeks ago.
I was just in London 2 months ago, and he was doing private shows in London. He played in some woman's living room.
I heard about that.
Yeah, like she's some musician who's like doing really well or about to pop, and so there was some connection with her, and he set up in her apartment in the living room.
What's your favorite? Do you have a favorite Prince song?
Oh my God, there's too. Well, if we have to narrow it down, it would have to be the Pope.
The Pope?
You can be the president. I'd rather be the Pope. Rather be. That song starts off with the sample of Bernie Mac from Def Jam Comedy.
Def Comedy
The famous comedy Bernie Mac thing where he keeps going, you don't understand. I ain't scared of you motherfuckers. And so Prince sampled that, and it's at the beginning of that song. It's great. I love that song.
No shit.
You can be the president. I'd rather be the Pope. Sampling
comedy. Prince.
Prince is the man.
I had no idea.
Many years ago when I played here, maybe 95, 96, someone that worked for Prince was a fan of mine, and they were here, and then they invited me out. It was on a Saturday, and every Saturday in the summer here, he did these jam sessions with the new power generation, and they started at like 2 or 3 in the morning, and they would jam until like 6 in the morning, and it was one of the greatest nights of my life. I'm a huge fan. There was only about 50 people there.
Was it out in a suburb?
No, it was in Paisley Park.
Yeah. No, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's sort of a
that's how. What is it?
Chanhassen, I believe.
Okay, but yeah, it's out there.
So you went out. Yeah, that's what he did a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, and the guy that worked for him was pretty well connected. I should have stayed in touch with that guy.
I guess.
But that was before email and being able to stay in touch with somebody. I mean, who knows what? Probably didn't even have a cell phone at the time, or mobile phones as we called them back then.
And if you had a mobile,
but the guy gave me a tour and he had, Mr. Nelson had, he's got his own sew shop, where they design his own clothes with all these fabrics, and then he had the recording room, and then where he played was where he shoots the videos, and then he showed me this kind of underground garage where he had his motorcycles and his pimp cars and stuff.
Holy crap.
And he had the motorcycle from Purple Rain.
Really?
Which was custom made. It was kind of small.
I was going to say, is it the scooter?
But I love that guy.
That's awesome.
Wish I had $1 for every party I saved.
From playing Prince? Or is that a lyric?
That's a lyric.
That's a lyric?
Yeah. That's
which song?
Let's get it up. 22 positions in a one-night stand.
Get off.
Get off, yeah.
Get it off. Who knew?
I wish I had $1 for every party I saved.
Yeah. I know that one. I had that cassette. I know that one. How's your podcast?
If I gave you diamonds and pearls.
That's right. Cream.
That's it.
Get on top.
My podcast is...
How is it going, man?
It's going really well. I've had an incredible year. I don't have any commercials in it, and it's just a labor of love, so I'm not obsessed with numbers and things like that, but It's going really well. I was in New Zealand last May. I did the New Zealand Comedy Festival, and I was on like the NPR of New Zealand. And this woman asked me, "What's the one thing I wanted to do while I was in New Zealand?" And I said, "I know it sounds silly, but I'd like to interview Kim.com." And he's on the FBI most wanted list. The New Zealand Army and the FBI raided his mansion about a year and a half ago in New Zealand. He's German and Finnish, and he started megaupload.com, where all these movie files, all these files were traded.
Oh, people are stealing?
People didn't know what was on it. It wasn't like Napster, where you could type in a title. It was just files being traded, and he's been persecuted. And someone was listening. He followed me on Twitter like about an hour later. And then I followed him back, and then I wrote him. I saw there was an email contact on his Twitter profile, and I sent him a really nice email. And I got invited to his mansion.
What?
And he's like a Bond villain. He's got his own army, on his property, men in black with machine guns.
Get out of here.
And he's an awesome guy, man. He loves comedy. The festival people told me he goes to shows all the time. And he was great. And he really...
Does he live free in New Zealand?
Well, he can't leave New Zealand.
So he's okay there.
Yeah.
Can't go anywhere
Can't
else.
leave the country.
Amazing.
But that's a pretty good country to be stuck in.
I've heard.
It's stunning. Yeah.
Did you run into Arj when you were down there?
Yeah, in Australia. I've seen Arj over there a bunch, yeah. And then also, I've had a lot of comedians on my podcast, Doug Stanhope several times, and Brian Regan, and Russell Peters, all these guys who are good friends of mine, Jim Gaffigan and things.
Yeah.
But then there's also been some other interesting...
Yeah, I looked at the names. There's some I don't recognize.
Well, I've done a lot of comedians around the world, in my travels, like, comedians in Malaysia, Ireland, Australia, did a bunch of guys in New Zealand. You got, English comedians that are big. But do you remember Terrence Trent D'Arby?
Of course.
I was a huge fan, and I looked him up years ago. My wife and I, we don't live anywhere, so when we have time off, we just go. Like the last 3 years in a row, we've gone to Rome and rented an apartment in Rome.
You were talking about that last time.
Yeah. So we did it again.
Rome.
We did it again last September.
Damn.
So that's 3 years in a row. And he lives in Milan, and he changed his name to Sananda Maitreya.
Okay.
And I was going to go to Milan to interview the guy. But his schedule didn't work out, so I had to do that one over Skype. But the guy still puts out music. His name is Sananda Maitreya. He does great work. And really funny, cool guy. And, I mean, I loved this guy from the beginning. And
Blame It on the Rain. Is that a song? Blame It on the... What was his...
That hardline according... Introducing the hardline according to Terrence Trent D'Arby. I think that came out like 86.
Yeah.
And I went on the road in 86. Or maybe it came out in 87. So, I mean, like that and like James Brown and Prince and all this stuff helped me get down the highway, and lots of Otis Redding.
Oh, yeah.
I still listen to Otis constantly. There was Wishing Well was the big hit.
Yeah.
But the massive hit was Sign Your Name. Across my heart.
Oh, yeah.
I want you to be my baby.
Did he explain the name change?
I think it's kind of similar to Prince. I think he wanted to kill that former identity. I think with Prince, it was more of a contractual thing with Sony Records.
Yeah.
But with him, I think I couldn't ask him about his publicist. I couldn't ask him about because he grew up in a little town in Florida. I grew up in a little town in Florida, and that's why I've always liked the guy.
Oh, okay.
But I wasn't allowed to ask him about that stuff.
Interesting.
Which is okay. It's fine. That's the way the guy wants it.
Yeah.
I got enough love and respect for him.
Sure. What, was he surprised?
Like Rogers Nelson. I mean, whatever he wants me to call him, I'd be happy.
Right.
You guys brought me so much joy in my life.
Was there any sense of he was looking, wondering why is this comic originally from Orlando so interested in me?
Well, I tell you what, and I approached it from a very pure way. I believe in the power of a well-written email. Like, people send them to me all the time. Like my podcast, I get emails from people. Some guy wrote me in China a couple weeks ago. He lives in Chengdu, however you pronounce it. It's like the third largest city in China. I've been all over China. Had no idea where the place was.
Okay.
It's the third largest city in China. And the guy, you know, he's going through some difficult, medical procedures or something. The kid was having a tough time in his life, but he said my podcast was giving him fuel, and he just wrote me this really beautiful email. I mean, I'll get these emails from people and like tell me how much they love my comedy and my podcast or whatever, and I think there's a real power in that, and that's what I did with Kim.com, and it's what I did with Sananda Maitreya. After I was like in a drugstore a couple years ago, and I heard Sign Your Name, and I was like, God, whatever happened to him? And I Googled him, and then I find out that he changed his name to Sananda Maitreya. He lives in Milan. He's married. He's got a couple kids. And I sent him, and I bought his new album, which was Return to Zooathlon, which has got some phenomenal numbers on it. So I wrote him and told him how much I loved the new album, and that I'm a comedian, and that it's, you know, helped pump me up before shows and stuff. And so then that's how I, you know. So I mean, it wasn't like a, hey, I'm from Florida, dude, and you're from Florida. We should, you know. I never even mentioned it.
And not even, and it wouldn't be like, hey, we're going back and finding the one-hit wonders or two-hit wonders.
No, nothing like that. No, and I think,
because I would imagine there's some worry of people like him, like,
I'm sure
somebody's making fun of me here.
I'm sure people have probably tried to do that.
When VH1 calls, he probably doesn't pick up the phone.
Exactly. Yeah. But mine was like, and I'd like to promote your new album. So during the conversation, I sliced in my favorite songs with his permission, his publicist's permission, throughout the conversation. You know.
So how often are you not releasing your
once a week?
You're doing once a week.
Once
now?
a week. Yeah, the one that just went up last week. I was just in London 2 months ago, and I met this girl, Natalia Tena, and she was in the Harry Potter movies.
Okay.
And she's also in Game of Thrones. And
now I'm more interested.
Yeah, and I had no idea. I've never seen either.
What?
Yeah.
Oh.
So she's a good friend of mine, a comedian. His brother is in her band. She has a band called Molotov Jukebox, and they're this really fun party band. And I had her on, and so and I sliced in, you know, 2 of her songs.
Yeah.
And she's hilarious. She's a really funny girl. And that was the last episode, and then the one actually today, the next episode is supposed to go up, which is with Don Ward, the owner of the Comedy Store in London.
Oh wow!
That changed the face of comedy in England. That club, which opened in 78, but then they moved to their new room in like 82 or 81. But before that place opened, stand-up comedy in England was mother-in-law jokes and racist jokes, you know?
Okay.
So that, I mean, and, you know, Eddie Izzard played there, French and Saunders, who went on to do Absolutely Fabulous, Ben Elton, all the, you know, Jimmy Carr, all these, I mean, the stalwarts of British comedy all, you know, played at this guy's room. And that club is how I got all these international gigs.
Oh, really?
By getting in with the Comedy Store in London. That was my key to other gigs in Europe, and then doing gigs in Asia and Australia and around the world. So, yeah.
That's interesting. So the no club in the United States could do that for you?
No. Now, maybe.
Yeah.
Now things have changed, but we're talking...
What was the step to get... Well, how did you get in there?
Well, Greg Proops and Rich Hall are good friends of mine, and they were playing in England. They were both living over there, essentially. Greg Proops was doing Whose Line Is It Anyway, and Rich Hall had basically just moved over there. And they're good friends of mine, and they both told me they thought I would do well over there because they thought I had, you know, smart material. Mm-hmm. And they both pretty much coached me. When I made a couple trips to London, and they go, you don't go to the Comedy Store first. You know, like if you're from Minneapolis, man, you don't go to Acme first. No. I mean, you can. Yeah, I guess it wouldn't hurt that bad. But it would be better if you did some peripheral gigs and got your sea legs. Yeah. I mean, if you were coming from a different country, you know, you want to find out what references work and don't.
Right.
So I warmed up. I did peripheral gigs and played all these gigs around the city before I went to the best club. So they helped me get in there.
How many years into comedy was that?
This is like 98, 99. Yeah, that's when I did it. So, I mean, I started 84. I've been doing it 30 years now.
Jesus.
Yeah.
And you were a teenager, right?
17. I'm 47 now.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do you?
What a life.
Yeah. There are a few others that have started that early. Like, you think of anybody else that started that young?
Yeah, loads of guys. I know Dave Chappelle started at like 16.
Yeah.
Bill Hicks started at 17. The prodigies.
Yeah. I just think, like, there's absolutely nothing. I learned to drive at that age, but
yeah.
What else am I doing from that age? I guess I lost my virginity around that age. I'm still doing that. That worked out well.
Well, those were my thoughts, too. You can only talk about what you know. And my jokes when I was 17 were the thoughts of a 17-year-old.
Yeah. Chicks.
And my big closer that I did back then was a little tale about going on a date with a girl in my dad's Chrysler LeBaron.
Yeah.
And we're parked after the date, and we're making out. And I made my big move. I unbuttoned her pants. And she grabbed my wrist, and she pushed my hand away. And she goes, "If I do anything with you, what's it going to mean?" And I said, "Well, for you, a ride home." See, it's still funny.
I like it.
Yeah, but that's the thought of a 17-year-old right there.
Hey, we had a comedian passed away in the last week, John Panette.
Yeah.
Do you know him at all?
I did. I mean, we weren't like great friends, but of course, God, that's the thing about comedy is it's a really small community, and you know everybody, and that's word to the wise comedians. If you're a jackass or a joke thief, word gets around instantly. And then if you're a great guy, word gets around. Everybody loved John.
I was going to say, I've heard he's the good guy.
There was nobody. I mean, everybody. I mean, even if you didn't know him, you knew he was a good guy.
Yeah, I was lucky. I met him about a year ago. He was in town.
I mean, his biggest problems were with himself and what he had to deal with. But I mean, a lot of comedians. I've had my own issue with drugs and alcohol. I mean, I didn't see it as an issue. Now that I'm not doing them, I look back and I say, "Oh yeah, I've had my own issue." But no, I loved practically every minute of it until I fell off a stool in Philadelphia and got 6 stitches on my forehead.
So you're everything's in the past right now?
No, well, yeah, I haven't. Yeah. I've been.
So when you say you fell off a stool and hit your head, what you really mean is you really fell off a stool and hit your head?
Yeah, I wish I had a good story. I wish there was a fight. If there was a fight or a car wreck or, I was saving some woman in an alley being raped by, like, some hoodlums, I mean, then I'd still be drinking. But, yeah, no, it was the embarrassing, pathetic. I was by myself January 1st. My wife was in Holland visiting her mother, and I had a bunch of beers and watched the Fiesta Bowl because my brother was there and his team was playing.
Okay.
And I was texting my brother when the game ended. Great game, love you, bro. Blacked out, fell forward, and my head went down like a lawn dart on the tile floor. And that was, I just thought, it's, I'm getting older now.
Sure.
It's just time to take a break.
First time you had stitches?
Yeah.
Ever. Well, congratulations. You went a long way.
Yeah, and on the forehead, too. What a spot.
Mm-hmm. I can't see it from here.
You can't?
No. Is there a scar?
You don't see that?
Okay. Yeah, I do.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, so, but that's good. It's actually, clarity is a drug unto itself.
I've heard that.
Yeah.
But this is coming from a guy, as we talked about, the first time you were on this podcast. I mean, you lived in Amsterdam for, 5 years or something?
Yeah.
So there's been experimenting.
Well, and then before I moved to Amsterdam, I was living in New York City for 2 years, and Mitch Hedberg was one of my best friends.
Mm-hmm.
He was living at the Chelsea Hotel. I had a Rockstar apartment in the Wall Street area, which is a short walk from each other.
Nice.
And, the story I always tell is I was partying so much when I lived in New York City, I actually moved to Amsterdam to bring it down a notch. which is there's actually truth to that. Because I had fallen in love with a Dutch girl, and she cared about me, and and she made me love life again. I mean, I was kind of reckless there for a couple years because I had a lot of money and living in New York, and I just didn't care.
Yeah.
So, but the John Panette thing, I knew him. I mean, it was like, we did a few TV tapings years ago together, and then I would run into him. And just, he was a guy that, you always knew he was trying so hard to, with his weight and stuff. And then, you'd see him, backstage with a couple of pizzas. And you're like, that's the thing about comedy, man. It's like, I can forgive anybody. I can forgive comedians for anything.
Mm-hmm.
Family and friends, I've got a certain code of ethics. If you cross it, then I'm kind of ruthless, and I will hold a grudge. But comedians, I can forgive for anything. And,
why is that?
Well, I mean, it's the brotherhood of the grape. It's it's like an exclusive club of fighter pilots. If
you don't have them, you have no one.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes comedians are all comedians have.
Yeah,
and he's struggling with his weight, and you see him with a couple pizzas, and he's like, "Hey, brother, I mean, you don't say these words verbally,
right.
It's like my dad used to drink a lot, and my siblings judged him, and I always thought, instead of judge the man, why not sit down and have a drink with him and hang out?
Okay.
So I guess somewhere in that is the way I've always, operated. So, John, God, you knew he had his own, the weight on him was put on him by himself from what he was trying to do. I mean, did he have to try and lose weight or struggle? I didn't want him to. Mm-hmm. I wanted him to be whoever he wanted to be.
Right.
And Jesus Christ, was there a funnier guy? I mean, he had that really baby face.
Yeah.
No matter how old he got, he just had this this really baby face and just so lovable.
Yeah, very lovable. That's a great way to describe him. Lovable.
Yeah, but funny. I mean, okay, it's all going to be jokes about the weight and food and stuff, but they were really presented in great sucker punch boomerang kind of ways. And I think he was an absolute brilliant comedian, universally loved across the board by anyone who saw him or knew him. And I heard that he had the stomach staple or whatever that stuff, and that he had, now that he died, and you read the obituaries and stuff,
sure,
that information is out, but he didn't have to do that for me.
Yeah.
I loved him the way he was.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man. It's interesting. It's unfortunate.
Yeah, I thought I just, not to bring the party down, but I figured,
it's a sunny day.
It's a comedy podcast.
You got me in a dark room talking about comedy deaths.
I know. Let's see, any other deaths you'd like? No, I'm kidding. Orlando, Florida. I have a theory, or a lot of people have this theory, that the weirdest stories. Why is Florida? Why do the weirdest things in the United States happen in Florida?
It's the heat. Heat messes with people. If you look, all the strangest things happen in Florida, Arizona, and Texas. Those are the hot states. But Florida is the champ. Florida is hands down the champ. There's the bath salt zombie guy eating but it wasn't bath salts. They only found marijuana in his system.
That's right.
And he was chewing the homeless guy's face. Mm-hmm. All these racial deaths and murders. Zimmerman, Jacksonville guy unloaded his gun into the car with the kids listening to the rap music. They're just, and that's the thing. My wife is from Holland. Florida, the real estate's really cheap there. My family's all there.
And they are still?
Yeah, and so I've suggested to my wife, hey, we could have a place at the beach, for like $150,000.
Uh-huh.
And she wants nothing to do with it. Yeah.
But did she know about the seedy side of Florida? Or why
no, she's only judging by people she's met personally. I like Florida. I mean, it's a great place to go back to. It's a great place to go during the holidays for me and see my family. I'm glad my family's there and they're not in the middle of Nebraska, somewhere like that.
I would love to have my parents took a little vacation. That's something they never, ever, ever, ever do. They took a little vacation because it was so unbearably freaking cold here all winter. And then my mom starts telling me, like, and actually we're thinking about, because they went to Texas. And I said, why'd you pick Texas? Well, we're thinking about maybe, when we're both retired that we'd, get a place there for the winter. I'm like, are you really? Like, I'm going to be one of those people that has a relative, like, in a southern state
You're
that I can go visit?
Yeah.
It's the greatest news ever.
Yeah. Because, like, when I'm going around the world and traveling and, like, usually I try and avoid winter. That's the greatest thing I've learned. Is the opposite season thing. Like, there were a lot of winters I would go perform in Australia, which it's summer during their winter.
Right.
My mother is from Argentina. I've got some family there. It's also summer there during our winter. So it was a few winters I went down there.
Oh, wow.
But the last 2 winters I've been in Europe where it was freezing and, not Minneapolis freezing. But it's always great to go back to Florida. And, I spent my life running away from Florida because I knew show business wasn't there.
Right.
And I wanted to be a comedian and couldn't wait to get away from it. Couldn't wait to go move and have adventure. I moved to New York. Then I lived in San Francisco. Then I lived in L.A. Then I lived in New York again. Then Amsterdam. And I don't know, sometime in the last 5-10 years, I was in Florida and I looked around. I'm like, God, no, it's like December, January. The weather's great. And there's palm trees. And I'm like, God, why was I so angry?
Yeah.
What do you have to be angry about when you grow up in paradise?
I could get used to looking at
We only got half a rainbow today, man. Life is bullshit.
I rate today a half rainbow day. Yeah, I could get used to seeing palm trees.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. For me personally, like, I was just in Barcelona. I love Amsterdam. Amsterdam is great. And it's so much more than drugs and prostitutes. And now the United States is about to eclipse. Amsterdam is about to go out of business for marijuana smokers.
I was actually going to ask you about that, yeah.
And Jesus, you go to California and edible everything. Jolly Ranchers, peppermint patty, weed.
Yeah.
It's not just mushroom
that must be.
brownies.
That's what I wanted to ask. I mean, that must be a real different perspective for you as experiencing that whole, where it's hey, everybody's getting high. It's no big deal. It's not it's decriminalized.
But Amsterdam's not like that, and then hopefully that is what will happen to the United States. See, my wife totally hates weed, and so did the Dutch girl that I moved there for.
Interesting.
Dutch people aren't smoking weed all the time.
Yeah,
and Dutch people aren't going to prostitutes. Dutch people are historically great business people. They know that these things are going to exist. People want to do drugs. People want to go to prostitutes, and they regulate it, and they make money off of it because they're great business people. But a Dutch person smoking weed all the time, they say either you're a tourist or a teenager if you smoke pot. It's frowned upon, actually. And that they grow up in school learning about, the danger. If you want to achieve something in your life, you don't want to be smoking pot all the time.
Yeah.
And there was times I lived in Amsterdam, the red light district is in the center of the city. So, I mean, to get, you have to go through there a lot. Mm-hmm. And actually a lot of Dutch people find it a desirable place to live because it's in the center of the city. And there were a few times I saw little school groups, little kids, and the teacher walking them through on a class trip through the red light district. And they're explaining to the children the sex industry and what's going on. And they're basically, saying to the kids, you don't want to end up in the window selling your body for money. Or, you don't want to be the kind of person that would go there. Hopefully, if you're a well-rounded person, you have love in your life and you're satisfied and you wouldn't, do that kind of thing.
It's sort of like Scared Straight, except it's just like the part of everyday life. Like, you see these people? You don't want to be like them.
Yeah.
Wow. That makes sense, though.
So, hopefully the state, I don't know. I think it's interesting in the United States now, weed seems to be, coming into being legalized. Mm-hmm. And I think that is because our government realized that too many people were paying attention to what was going on. If we got these people in a fog and they're stoned and you give them this one little, biscuit of legalized marijuana, then they're not going to. I think it was probably the Occupy movement that legalized marijuana in this country. People are like, wow, all these people are angry and paying attention to what's going on.
Well, where's the best stuff you've ever imbibed in? Northern
California outdoor weed.
Really?
Grown outdoor in the mountains. That's the best. The hydroponic stuff is no good.
Interesting.
Yeah, because it's like, I call it polio weed. You experience the disease polio for the length of your high. You're on the couch. You can't lift your arms. That's no fun. I always wanted. Whenever I did anything, my thing is jokes. I want to get jokes. So, like, if I did mushrooms or smoked some weed, I would want to get like jokes or a story out of it. And if you don't, then it's kind of a waste of a time.
So you're saying the Northern California outdoor grown is the jokey joke?
That's the jokey joke weed.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
What are they don't have that in stores here.
They don't have it in stores?
No. They don't have it in stores here or anything. I think it's coming to Minnesota sooner than later.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, God. I think Minnesota will be one of the first.
I think so. Hey, let's go back to living in Orlando. We brought up a little bit the last time you were on, and you, in fact, told me, I remember a family member worked at Disney.
Two, my brother and my sister.
Your brother and your sister, yeah. But you were busy going to twin spring training games.
Well, I mean, my brother worked at Disney, and when I was 14, I would ride to school with him every day, ride to work with him every day in the summer, and I would spend one day riding one ride over and over, like one day all on the teacups, one day all on, the Haunted Mansion or Pirates of the Caribbean. Anyway, I grew up with spring training.
Our lovable Orlando, Minnesota Twins.
With the Minnesota Twins every March.
They were in Orlando until 88, 9, something like that. And now they're in Fort Myers.
They played at Tinker Field, which is downtown Orlando.
Which is a great name in and of itself. Tinker.
Well, you know where that name comes from.
I don't.
Remember the famous Chicago Cubs, Tinkers to Evers to Chance was their deadly triple play, or a double play, rather.
Yeah.
In like the 30s. And it was Tinkers to Evers to Chance. And the guy, Tinker, who played for the Cubs, when he retired, he moved to Orlando. And Orlando in the 30s was nothing. And so he bought land there, and I think somehow he'd started baseball in Orlando or was a early person or investor, and that's why it's Tinker Field. But it's named after the Chicago Cub from the 1930s.
I had no idea.
Yeah, and do
you remember his first name at all?
Jackie Robinson played there before. It was like he did these exhibition games leading up to. There's a lot of history at Tinker Field, and the Twins were great, man. We grew up. I grew up going to the Minnesota Twins spring training. My dad actually did the coolest thing. My father's the reason I'm a comedian. My father was killed by a drunk driver in 2009, which was very painful.
Jesus, I had no idea.
My dad was a really cool guy. He was a Vietnam veteran, flew helicopters in Vietnam, was shot down, saved. Everyone died except for him and one other guy. And he saved the guy's life. He got like 5 medals. He's buried in Arlington National Cemetery.
Wow.
As he should be, because he's a decorated war hero. But my dad loved comedy. My dad took me to my first comedy show when I was 12, and my dad had comedy albums, and my dad also loved baseball. So the reason that comedy and baseball I love because of my dad. And my dad would do the coolest thing. When I was a kid, I'd be in class, and a note would come to the class, and they'd say, Tom, you have to go to the office. You have a dentist appointment or a doctor's appointment. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't have a dentist appointment. And I'm walking to the office, and I'd get there, and my dad would be standing there with a shit-eating grin on his face. And my dad would get me out of class and take me to spring training games.
What the hell?
So I've always wanted to have a kid so I could do this. So I could get my kid out of school and go take it. And then, of course, your kid would probably be like, oh, Dad, I had a big test that day. You ruined everything. But
they can Skype their tests.
It was a cool thing, man. And that little stadium.
Coolest dad ever, Tom.
Coolest dad ever.
That's
Yeah.
Incredible.
I'm David Rhodes' son.
Yeah, there you go.
So it was great, man. And, the Twins were really lovable in the early 80s. They had Roy Smalley was the big player.
Sure.
And Rob Wilfong with his cute mustache.
Mm-hmm. Smalley had the hair. Wilfong with the mustache.
Smalley was like the only good Twin for a long time. I guess Wilfong was their number 2 guy.
What a name.
And then there was the guy, we talked about him last time. I thought, I loved the guy because he was just beautiful. He was really handsome and he had feathered hair. Was Rick Sofield. And I thought and he had like a little comb sticking out of his back pocket.
He didn't.
Yeah, like that 70s comb with the handle.
Right.
Sticking out of his back pocket. So, when he wasn't on the field, he was making his feather.
Batting gloves in one pocket.
Yeah.
Comb in the other.
I thought Rick Sofield was going to be the next Mickey Mantle. Oh, God, I loved Rick Sofield. You know what? He wasn't the next Mickey Mantle.
No, Mickey played more than 2 seasons. Mickey hit more than 10 home runs.
Yeah.
Not only did he hit more than 10 in a season, he had many more than that in his career, which, Rick Sofield.
It was cool, though. My dad, we had seats. There was one time Harmon Killebrew was there. And they had introduced him before the show, and I'm like 12. And we're like 10 rows behind Harmon Killebrew, and my dad goes, take this pen and the program down to that. He pointed him out to me. I mean, and they introduced him before, and he stood up. Let's go ask him to sign this. I was like, no, Dad, I don't want to. Mm-hmm. And my dad goes, do it. He goes, nobody's going to refuse a cute little kid.
Right.
I mean, my dad was smooth. Always
he's right.
Like when I sold candy. Oh, I got to tell you when I sold candy for Little League. And so I walked down, and Harmon Killebrew signed the program. And when I sold in Little League, you have to sell boxes of candy.
Yeah.
We did. And then whoever sold the most candy got anyway, I sold the most candy. Mm-hmm. And my dad was like, people will not refuse a cute little kid. Never. And so my dad would drive me through neighborhoods, and I'd go to the doors, and I'd sell this candy. And I sold a lot of candy. And I got to go, I won on our team, or I think maybe the whole league or something. And I got to go to this local sporting goods store and pick out whatever I wanted. And it was 1976, and I'm like 9. I was 9 years old. Uh-huh. I picked out a red, white, and blue glove. They had it was like a Rawlings for 1976 made a red, white, and blue glove.
Oh, for the
bicentennial.
The bicentennial. Jesus. Where is that glove now? Do you have any idea?
I have no idea.
Where that clown glove is?
Yeah. No.
Did you ever use the clown glove in a game?
I did, sure. Yeah. Then, I was 9, 10.
It was, of course, yeah. It was cute on a kid that age. That's like the ABA basketball, weren't they? Red, white, and blue?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It was like that whole era. Uh-huh. That everything was red, white, and blue that year. Yeah.
And that's what you picked out. That's like a dream come true. That or anything you can pick out of a toy store for a 10-year-old.
Yeah.
Sports store.
Yeah, you lie awake dreaming about those kind of opportunities.
I remember when there was some TV show on when I was a kid, and the grand prize was a shopping spree. It was that show Double Dare on Nickelodeon, and the grand prize at the end of every episode was a shopping spree at Toys R Us.
Wow.
Yeah. And as someone growing up in Minnesota back then, they didn't really Toys R Us, I don't think, was even in this market yet.
Right.
Yeah. I would look at the TV and that thing like, I would do anything for that opportunity. This magic toy store that we don't have here. And no, money's not a concern. Oh, my God. So clearly those are, back to the baseball thing, those are some great memories. Do you know where the autographed Harmon...
I probably have it somewhere. Yeah. I have a massive baseball card collection.
Really?
Yeah, God. But I mean, when I was younger, but I still have it. It's in my storage unit.
So you don't really live anywhere. Where's your storage unit?
Los Angeles.
Okay.
Yeah. Suburban Los Angeles. Somewhere.
Is there a bed in that storage unit not being used? Yeah?
Yeah, well, when I moved to Amsterdam, I threw everything into storage. And then when I came back from Amsterdam, I lived in L.A. for a couple years. And I looked at it as my empire of $20 purchases. The only things that really meant anything to me were my books and my CD collection, and all those cost about $20 each.
Yeah.
And then when I was living in an apartment that I wasn't there half the time, I was on the road, and I wasn't that crazy about Los Angeles, so I was like, there's no point in living anywhere. So I threw everything into storage again, but I really slimmed it down. I kept the bed, I have these beautiful wood bookshelves. I have a massive book collection. And I got rid of most things. I knew comedians that I knew needed things. I gave. I knew a comedian needed a TV. Take the TV. Another guy needed a coffee table. Take my coffee table. I got rid of most of the furniture. I have the bed and the bookshelves.
Do you have a vehicle anywhere?
No, I did have a vehicle that I either kept in Florida or in California, friends and relatives, when I would be out of the country for 6 months of the year. But my niece flipped her car right before Christmas, and I gave it to her.
Aww.
So I don't have a vehicle right now.
But now you're the awesome Uncle Tom.
But I condensed everything in the storage unit, mostly to family photos, comedy stuff, things that things that are really personal to me.
If it ended up on Storage Wars, would it be visible anything of value? What do you think someone would bid on your?
It would never get to that point. It would never. I've been keeping this stuff. It's 9 years now. I've been paying for that storage unit. So, I'm in my baseball card collection. I mean, God, and all this comedy stuff. I mean, I got so many. My photos alone. I mean, just aside from family stuff. I mean, all these. Brian Regan, Mitch Hedberg, Louis C.K., Dave Attell, just photos of my life in comedy. People that I've been friends with.
You have something going on with Dave Attell, some TV thing coming up, right?
I just did this new Comedy Central series that he filmed in New York City called Comedy Underground, and it's Comedians Uncensored. My episode comes on May 31st.
Now, I've read a little about it, so it's going to be like a late night... literally uncensored.
It was all uncensored, so I guess it'll come on after midnight. Mm-hmm. Some of the comedians didn't seem to take that opportunity. Some of them seem to be doing their regular acts. I mean, I tried to do as hard hitting, fucked up or dirty-ish jokes as I could.
When was that filmed?
December.
Oh yeah.
In New York.
And he comes on, does a little hosting, tells some jokes?
Yep. Exactly.
I love Attell. That'll be good.
Yeah.
And did you say when that comes out?
May 31st is my episode.
Okay.
Yeah.
On Comedy Central.
Mm-hmm.
What else have you... how about you? A special for you coming up anytime?
I have an hour special on Netflix right now.
That is on Netflix now?
Yeah. I did it, I don't know, 2 years ago, a year and a half ago?
Yeah.
And it's up there. So, yeah, I'm trying to come up with the new hour to do another one.
Now, I see I set Google alerts for all my guests to kind of keep tabs
What
on
happened?
things.
What'd you see?
No, I see your name with these. Are you still doing a travel thing with Huffington Post? Were you writing?
I was. Well, I mean, technically, I guess I still am. Huffington Post asked me to be a travel writer
because the first one that came up, I'm like, is this the same? Now I know Tom Rhodes. I know he travels a lot.
What was it?
I don't remember. Which one it was.
About getting in a fight in Ireland on my honeymoon?
No, it was maybe southern.
Jakarta, Indonesia.
That could have been it.
Yeah,
that could have been it. But I wasn't sure. When I'm looking at the headline and the title of the article or the column, the article, whatever you would call it, the piece.
Yeah,
like, is this the same Tom Rhodes?
That is the same Tom Rhodes. Yeah, they contacted me a few years ago about being a travel writer, and they said I could write about whatever I want. There's no deadline. Write about whenever I want. Submit them whenever I want. Choose whatever topics I want to write about, and I was doing that. And got a lot of people find that very prestigious. A lot of people have been very impressed. Usually, a lot of interviews I've done, that's the first thing out of their mouth.
Oh, really?
Oh, so you're a travel writer for Huffington Post, which is cool, And I've actually had a lot of writers ask me, "How'd you get that job? How can I do that?" I'm like, "Well, they contacted me. I don't know how you would submit to them. I don't." But I was putting a lot of effort into these stories, and I would because when something goes on the internet, it's there forever,
right?
So I would rewrite them like 7, 8 times. I'd rewrite them like 3 or 4 times, and my wife would go, "No, this shouldn't go in the beginning," and we'd get in a big argument. And then I'd put the story down for a couple weeks, come back to it, and then read it again, and then okay, she was right. Then I'd rewrite it, and I was putting all this effort into it, and I thought, because it doesn't pay any money, and I thought I should be putting this much effort into my own book that I've always wanted to write. So a few years ago, I started working on. So I haven't been submitting stories to the Huffington Post in the last 2 years because I've been focusing on my own stories, my best stories about traveling the world as a comedian, all these different things that have happened to me, having the sitcom, having the late night talk show in Amsterdam, that wild New York period with Hedberg, starting out on the road, just all this crazy stuff that happened to me, guns, violence, things that I experienced. And then things about traveling the world, almost drowning in Thailand, falling in love with this girl moving to Amsterdam. Falling
off a stool.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we'll see if that makes it in there.
That'll be the last page.
We'll see. Yeah. But I hope to have that book done by the end of this year. I think we're about 60% there.
Really?
Yeah, and I've been working on it for a couple years. But it was those Huffington Post stories that made me decide, I should, be working on my own thing.
Yeah, do this for you. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Did you, what did your dad do for, you said was he in the service and anything after that?
Yeah, he was an insurance salesman.
Yeah. Was there traveling involved in that? How did you end up travel? You're known for traveling. Did you see that happening as a kid? Did you ever get the travel bug? Like, I want to see the world? Or?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, and I loved reading about explorers and, Discovery Channel and all that stuff. But, as a comedian, I'm from a little town outside of Orlando called Oviedo, and I knew that, the entertainment business wasn't going to come to Oviedo. And as a comedian, I started out on the southern circuits, and then I started to branch out and go up and down the East Coast to New York, and then eventually did gigs in the Midwest, and then I started taking investing trips of myself out to San Francisco and Los Angeles and doing sets, and then, before I got in all over, it was just a natural thing. And then eventually living in New York, and then starting to go investigate London, and then around the world. So it kind of happened organically.
Oh, okay. Did any thoughts on Letterman leaving in a year?
I grew up with Johnny Carson. Johnny Carson was my hero. When I had the late night talk show in Amsterdam, some of the Dutch magazine interviews I would do, they thought they were being snarky. They would go, so how do you feel that you're basically copying David Letterman's program? And I said, I, like David Letterman himself, are copying Johnny Carson's program.
Yeah.
Let's get that straight.
Yeah.
And Johnny Carson, I miss him like a dead relative.
Mm-hmm.
I loved Carson. And then when Letterman came on, I loved Letterman. It was boom. Oh, my God. Now here's 2 hours back to back. I knew I wanted to be a comedian since I was 12. And so that was my university. I would highlight the TV guide. We'd get the TV guide at the beginning of the week, and I would go through and look at Letterman and Carson, and I would highlight when they would have comedians on.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Carson had had comedians on, but then like Letterman had kind of subversive comedians on, like Emo Phillips and Judy Tenuta and different people. And so, that was kind of my university education. And and then people don't remember, Letterman was. My wife doesn't like Letterman. Like the last couple years, like when I'll have him on, she doesn't like Howard Stern either. She just finds both of them really irritating.
Yeah, my girlfriend has satellite radio, won't let me listen to Howard, and I turn on Letterman, and same thing, thumbs down.
Yeah, and
so I can relate.
I'm trying to explain to her that once upon a time, David Letterman was the young and angry, edgy comedian. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Jay Leno was in the nightclubs as well, but when Letterman's show started, and I used to write, he used to do viewer mail on Thursday.
Right.
And I was in high school, and I used to write letters hoping that that Letterman would read my viewer, and like silly stuff, like, you know, is Paul Schaefer really like a puppet, you know, behind the piano, like because it was always like silly, odd questions.
Yeah.
So I would sit there in school, and invent weird things to ask him. You know, he never read any of my letters, but anyway.
And when they would. I never did, but I had this, and because they would also show, and if your letter got read, it would also have your, you know, if it was handwritten, your handwriting would be on that paper that would be shown on national television.
Yeah, they black out your address.
They black out your address, but your name would be on there.
Yeah.
I mean, the closest thing to a...
Yeah, remember they had stupid pet tricks, stupid human tricks? I thought that show was hilarious.
Oh, yeah, brilliant. I loved that freaking those letters.
When
I forgot they even did that.
Yeah.
That was really good stuff.
That was great when it started. So... I think Letterman is. I mean, it's time.
Yeah,
you know, I guess it's time. I haven't been as loyal of a watcher in the last 10 years, but you know,
there's a lot of competition at that time of night now as well. A lot more than 15 years ago.
I'm glad that the late night industry has been rejuvenated because I think NBC kind of killed it, and they invented the medium with Jack Parr and Steve Allen. And then with that Leno, Conan O'Brien war, they kind of killed it for a little bit. I mean, it's how can you kill this perfect thing? I mean, that was in America, people would watch the evening news, the 11 o'clock news, and then you watch Johnny Carson, and it was a slam dunk every night.
Oh, yeah.
And then it just kind of went away. But now you got Kimmel and Conan and Jimmy Fallon's got the Tonight Show in New York. Now there's a huge comedy renaissance happening in New York. I was there in December for that Attell show, and I hadn't been there in a few years. So many great young comedians are living there. There's so many new places to play now. The UCB Theater.
Yeah.
I mean, you got all the classic clubs, but then there's all these different alternative rooms and...
you like to see that?
There's a really exciting thing happening in New York. And so now I think if you wanted to be a comedian, a lot of young guys are moving to New York as an alternative to going to Los Angeles. So I think the late night vehicle is back strong now. So, and I think maybe, you know, Letterman smells the writing on the wall that it's, you know, a lot of young blood has come in.
Think they'll put Is late night ready for a woman?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Joan Rivers, remember, was in the...
Yeah.
She used to fill in for Carson back in the day.
Yeah, and then she got offered the Fox show. Did you see the Carson PBS documentary?
Some of it.
God, it was brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was the one thing, Carson, when she didn't tell Carson that she got offered that Fox job.
And that burned the bridge.
Never spoke to her again.
Yeah, isn't that amazing?
He was really hurt by that.
Yeah. That's amazing stuff. You never did his show?
No, I was too young.
Yeah. God damn.
What, he retired in 94, I think, or 92, 91? Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. God, it's been a long time. It's been a long time. Well, what else, Tom? Anything else we should be talking about you got coming up this year? Where are you traveling?
Yeah. I've got, I just did January. I did Amsterdam, Paris, Barcelona, London for January, February. Came back, did the LA Improv, Stand-Up Scottsdale, Brad Garrett's in Las Vegas, Hyenas in Dallas. Then last week I was at the Punchline in Atlanta. This week I'm at the Holy Temple of the Ha Ha, otherwise known as the Acme Comedy Company. And next week I have off for my mother's birthday.
Oh.
And then I go to Los Angeles for 2 weeks. And then I do Seoul, Shanghai, Hanoi, Ho Chi Minh City, Hong Kong, come back to L.A., do Sacramento, San Francisco, and then Amsterdam, and then I'm doing the Edinburgh Comedy Festival for the month of August.
Wow.
Yep.
When's the last time you flew coach?
I still fly coach.
With all those miles you must be getting?
Well, I have a wife to consider. Two economies or one first class?
Well, how about one of each?
There you go. Yeah, make her sit in the back. Can you send these warm nuts back to my wife in 35F, please?
Pass her back a towel. By the time it gets there, it'll be room temperature.
Everybody's wiped their face on
That's
it.
That's right. Well, Tom, I think that does it, my friend.
It's great, man. My relationship with this club, Lewis Lee, I've had this conversation with a lot of people. I mean, there's a reason why some clubs last and some clubs don't. I mean, this club is a holy temple of the ha-ha. I mean, Lewis Lee has got exceptional taste in comedy. All the best comedians in American comedy in the last 20 years have all, played here, started here, developed here, and now that comedy is booming again in the United States, I think people might forget, the lean years when there were places like, Acme in Minneapolis, San Francisco Punchline, Atlanta Punchline. There's just a small handful of clubs that have been consistently bringing in badass comedians every week for, 20 years.
Let's look at it this way. There's people doing podcasts and shows all around the country, TV shows, radio shows. I'm the luckiest. I mean, I'm so grateful to this place.
Because you get all the guys that come into here.
I get to do. Yeah. I'm working for Acme, and I just have to sit here and talk to these talented people that come in week after week.
Yeah,
I'm not setting it up. I'm not inviting you to do a week at Acme. You're already coming. It's amazing because the talent that works here, it really is unbelievable. And people aren't coming here. They're freaking missing out. I just had another question I was going to ask you, and I totally fucking forgot it. God damn it. What was it? What was it, Tom? What was I going to ask you?
Tell me. Talk to me.
What was it? I just looked at something to remind me something I was going to ask you.
What I tweeted last night, I love Minnesota because it reminds me of how good human beings can be.
I retweeted that.
Did you? Oh, you saw it.
I did. Yeah. Is that just to suck up?
No, it's really true. You guys don't realize it. It's really true. You go to other parts of the country, you realize there's just like, God, it's this like store around the corner. Like some Ethiopian girl works there, and she's a nice Minnesota person, and she had her little headscarf on, Muslim woman, but you could tell she's from Minnesota because she was so kind and friendly. It's like that's Minnesota.
We had the I'm the captain now from Captain Phillips.
He drove a cab here, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
He was over at the ball game the other day. He threw out the first pitch of the Twins game.
Wow. Uh-huh. That's great.
He may give you a ride over there tomorrow. I'm not sure what he's doing. I heard he was in some financial trouble. We wish him the best of luck.
Indeed, sir.
That sounds sincere.
And I do think that Tom Hanks, every movie he does, he should be holding a volleyball.
Uh-huh. Absolutely. Tom, continued success, my friend.
Thank you, brother. It's always good to be back here on this stage.